50% of CEOs are so stressed out and they're battling mental health challenges such that they believe that they're making bad decisions. 50%. Those are the ones that are admitting it. And so if CEOs are feeling that stress level, you can only imagine the rest of the company. I think some of the best leaders, they're able to really connect with the people in service of their business in a way that's really human.
What do you think it will take to build a brand in 2025?
I have a secret.
Shh. Okay.
You can't let this out. This is a secret.
Andrea Sullivan
is a dynamic force in marketing and leadership.
She empowers entrepreneurs by helping them unlock their true potential.
She's worked alongside Gary Vaynerchuk, redefining how brands connect and influence culture.
In my 20s, I always tried to dress like all the dudes I was around. I started trying to call myself Andrea because I was a little embarrassed about the fact that I was from Wisconsin at that time. I was the only Midwest woman that was probably in sales and printing in New York City. What you realize is life is a lot more fun if you're just yourself. And the only way to stay relevant, whether it's a business and a brand, or whether it's a leader, is to really lean into who you are, but also connect with people where they are so that you can make a difference.
How do you lean into the heart?
It really starts with...
Welcome to What the Tech, your gateway to business strategies and tech secrets shaping today's workplace. Dave, there's nothing like heading into the future, and 2025 is shaping up to be the most impactful year I think we're going to have, with so much rapid change happening in the world, work, and social media, and everywhere else.
And new strategies and new changes politically and unsure about economic situations. We're all looking back to 2024 and we're ready to move forward and kick some ass.
I know. And, when things are the way they are, I always like looking and talking to wiser people than me, people that have, in the words of a former guest, James Orsini, to help us avoid potholes. And we have someone who is really close to James Orsini. He's like an uncle to me because he sounds like somebody I know. We get somebody who's close to him, close to Gary V, which is somebody a lot of people also know and recognize. Please welcome to the podcast, Andrea Sullivan.
Rolando, David.
Hey!
So excited.
Good to see you, Andrea. I know we were chatting about Andrea. You happen to like Andrea, so I'm going to stick with it. You don't mind?
I like it. I like it because you know how to pronounce that just ever so perfectly.
And if I try to roll my tongue, is that going to...
What's going to happen with that, Dave? What do you think?
I'm not sure.
You can go for it if you want.
Yeah,
I know I am. I'm going to go for my Rolando.
Yeah. I'm going to give it that clap up. I'm going to clap that up. I love that. That's great pronunciation. Love it. Dave's from the Northeast, so, that may be a bit of a challenge for him, huh?
Well, I'm from the Midwest, Dave, and if I can get there, I know I can bring you along too. So let's do it together. Let's do it together in 2025.
2025, that's my new thing. I roll my R's.
Roll your R's.
Your
And
R's.
did you say James Orsini? Is that what I heard you saying?
Yes. Did I say it right?
Oh my gosh. It's so good. I mean, I love you guys madly, but James Orsini, he is everybody's uncle, isn't he? He's like the smartest uncle that you want to have by your side at all times. And I have to say, I'm really lucky to be a business partner with him.
He came on the podcast, and this is no exaggeration. The words he spoke really stuck with me. And I've talked to a lot of really good people, but he's wise. He's been around a lot of people, and he's just a fascinating person because you wouldn't think he'd have a nickname like Jimmy the Pencil, right? Like that's a more of a mob guy kind of name, right? Made guy kind of name, but an accountant with the name Jimmy the Pencil, he's got to be a very intriguing guy.
Yeah, and he's got pictures to back that whole image up. I'll tell you. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing like having somebody who can really give you smart, intelligent insights in a way that he's always there for you right when you need it. And he's got tremendous follow through, and he makes people feel seen, which I think is something that's so important, especially now, as you guys were talking about 2025. I think everybody's trying to figure out how do they find themselves and maybe create that breakthrough moment. And he's somebody that does a lot of that kind of work for a lot of people.
Working for somebody as dynamic as Gary, and he told us the story of how he got hired. Gary's no slouch, right? He does his homework, and to impress somebody like him, and he told us the story over dinner how that happened. It was just a little bit of a reveal behind the curtain a bit into Gary's thinking and his world and what somebody like James, and by extension yourself, because now you're working with him very closely in this new kind of division that VaynerX has in vYve.
That's right. Yeah. So it's a whole new venture that we just launched in 2024 called vYve by Vayner. And we can talk about that a little bit more, but it's essentially a leadership acceleration program that's designed for entrepreneurs and for C-suiters to become their best and their happiest selves. And I feel so lucky to be doing this work now. But yeah, if you roll in the clock back and to think about how did I end up joining Vayner, I have a secret. You
Okay.
can't let this out. This is a secret.
It just
I did not join Vayner because of Gary Vaynerchuk. I joined
really.
because of James Orsini. James and I worked together at Interbrand for many years, and I was a part of Interbrand and Omnicom for almost 16 years. And when he joined Vayner, I actually was one of the last ones to talk to him to say, you must go take that role at Vayner. He then called me a couple years later and said, hey, it's time for you to come over. And I said, oh, I'd love to talk to Gary, but I'm not sure if I want to work for Gary. Only to then meet Gary and even more importantly, meet other members of his team beyond the Jameses of the world
Mhm.
and to realize that he attracts just the most incredible talent, very diverse talent in terms of the way that people think, the way they behave. They're all extremely curious. They're really driven, but they are some of the kindest people I've ever met in my life. So feel very lucky to be here. But yeah, it was actually James was the one that was across the dinner table for me. It wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily Gary.
He played the role of Gary Vee at your dinner
That's right.
table.
That's right.
Let's jump into the brand question because I think a lot of people, when they think about Gary Vee, they think VaynerMedia, they think social media. And as you were talking about, 2025 will be different. What do you think it will take to build a brand in 2025?
Yeah. So I think it's going to take major breakthroughs. And it's not just enough to be differentiated. You got to be really close to culture. You have to be connected in ways that show that you are all about the walk, not
Mhm.
just the talk. And I think that there's so much complexity out there. You guys were hitting it straight away that everything is changing so quickly. And we're out there on the front lines, really tracking what's going on the platforms and social media with the algorithms, but with culture, most importantly. And the only way to stay relevant, whether it's a business and a brand or whether it's a leader, is to really lean into who you are and to really live that authentically, but also connect with people where they are so that you can make a difference.
What's something that we can leave behind when building a brand in 2025? What's yesterday's news? Maybe it was a strategy that had been tested and it's something where maybe people shouldn't be spending their time in 2025 when building their brand.
I think the biggest conversation in 2024 was building brand versus performance marketing. And I think a lot of people leaned more into the performance side because, of course, everybody wants sales, but you can't live off of just a performance marketing strategy without that whole notion of building brand. And brand means that you're oftentimes giving things away. You're really understanding how you're retaining your customers, but also your employees. So I think that 2024 was a year where we learned that we had to do a lot more for all of our people within to be able to deliver experiences outside the organization that were going to be meaningful. But I think you're going to see people returning more towards a brand focus and having more of a balanced out view what it means to build brand and to have performance in the same way. We do a lot of work around really helping organizations to build out their organic presence, and we believe that's the way to go. So I think that leaning into that, and that's new for a lot of organizations that have relied a little bit more on paid strategies, looking at how are they connecting in the living room in ways that are meaningful and that can deliver a lot of ROI. And so how you're building brand and how you're delivering ROI on the other side is really our focus in a big, big way in 2025.
You talked about culture. The culture is ever changing, it's moving, it's never static, that's for sure. And we talked to somebody recently, and they talked about how storytelling from the heart, but leading with the heart makes a huge difference in telling that story. When I think about ourselves as a company and what we're doing on social media, I'm sure you got a team of people going through data, and this works and that doesn't work, and let's do this, and that tactic works, and this, just like you're talking about paid social. How do you lean into the heart as a brand in 2025? How do you pull that off?
Yeah, it really starts with vulnerability and vulnerability from the top. And I think it's interesting in the work that we do at vYve by Vayner, where we're with the executives that are at the top of big organizations. We're with the founders and CEOs of challenger brands and small to medium-sized businesses and helping them to understand what their role is in really sharing the human side of the business. And we've seen the things that have a lot of traction in terms of storytelling, in terms of presence, in terms of following, are the ones where they're not telling a fancy message in a fancy way with tons of high-end production. They're telling stories from the heart that people can connect with and they can see themselves. And I think that is one thing that we've learned from the elections is a lot of people aren't feeling like they feel seen. So companies need to think about that too. We're seeing more and more CEOs that are starting to open the windows in on their worlds in a way that shows the human behind the leader, in addition to just the business side. I think that's really important to people if they are going to become real brand aficionados.
How do you unlock that with the CEO? Being vulnerable probably isn't the first thing a CEO is stating about themselves. So how do you
Yeah,
unlock that?
no, it's so true. It's interesting because there's a Harvard study that was just done that 50% of CEOs are so stressed out and they're battling some different mental health challenges such that they believe that they're making bad decisions.
Hmm.
50%. Those are the ones that are admitting it. I think there's the rest of them are just aren't admitting it, right? And so if CEOs are feeling that stress level, you can only imagine the leaders and the rest of the company. So how do you get them into a place where they can feel somewhat safe in what they're sharing and expose that? I think it takes a great deal of work, and that's what we're seeing in the work that we do at vYve by Vayner. It takes a lot of self-awareness, takes a lot of empathy. I think it takes listening skills too. I think some of the best leaders, and you guys can probably think of some of your favorites that you've even had on the show, they're not only good talkers, but they're able to really connect with the stories that they're hearing about and the people that are serving them and that are in service of their business, and to be able to relate with them in a way that's really human.
I was thinking about something you were talking about, the human connection and what's relatable. Gary talks about, I'm sure you've probably seen that ocean spray commercial with the guy on the board and it's got
That's right.
Stevie Nicks playing in the background. And Gary's talked about that a few times, but you've probably seen that clip. That's low budget, a guy on his smartphone. Why did that connect? Why did that resonate? And can that be replicated, which is what everybody wants to do if you're brand building?
The interesting thing is like they got so much following from that one post and it
Hmm.
surpassed anything the company had ever done before, whether it
Yeah.
was, television or anything else. But I don't know about you guys, but when you watched that, you had a feeling that was
Yes.
beyond, right? And it was
Yes.
something that it just tapped into this sense of freedom. And you just felt like your whole life was ahead of you and you were doing something that felt like the right amount of wrong. It made cranberry juice pretty sexy, right?
Right. I think the song by
Yeah.
Stevie Nicks as well, it just amplified that combined with ocean spray. Now, I've had ocean spray mostly when it's Thanksgiving time, but it transcended, like you said, there was a feeling. I was like, oh, that song and the moment and him drinking it obviously really resonated with a lot of people. How can you replicate that? Because that's the thing. Okay, so that was a great commercial. There it is. We have it
But it
with
wasn't,
Gary Vee
it
talking
wasn't
about it.
supposed to be a commercial,
That's
right?
right. And I think that's the punchline, right? And that's what Gary talks about all the time is how we're not making commercials. We are making content that people love, that give them a feeling, that get them to do something. And that means that you got to just keep trying things. You have to look at what is the hook that draws people in, what is connecting, what's going on in culture, how are we listening to some of the trends. And we are just so mesmerized by what we're seeing out in social, and we share it with all of our clients, all of our people, so that we teach everybody how they can become makers and how we can make sure that we're leaning into the trends that we're seeing in a way that still builds brand, because you don't want to have just a bunch of one-off things everywhere. But at the end of the day, Gary talks a lot about this. There are so many people out there that are important to engage. And the more you put out there, the more read and the more listening you're going to be able to do to be able to learn how your brand can connect with all of your audiences.
I think about how social media is important, just like what we're talking about, but brand and capturing the moments and all of this. A lot of attention now, because of the environment we're in, is also surfacing more of that role of social media in youth. And I know you're involved in a number of activities outside of work. Where do you see that intersection between social media, youth, brain health? I'm generally curious because you're in the social media world and probably the most iconic person there is right now in social media. What's that balance between social media and the youth?
It's a great question. And I can tell you, as a professor at the School of Visual Arts in the Masters of Branding program, over the past 10 years, the changes in the students that join the program are pretty vast. All of them now are makers. So it used to be that some would join because they were copywriters, others were videographers or designers or strategists. And now everybody's sort of everything, right? And they all want to be storytellers, and they all have grown up in social. And so it is their go-to way of connecting with their friends, of learning about what's going on in the world and how they buy. It's everything, right? And I think the way that we look at life is very different. There's a lot of people that I think are nervous as parents to have their kids overly involved in social media. But as Gary says, the platforms are just an opportunity for people to be who they are. And sometimes what you see in the mirror is not something you're comfortable with. It's not the platforms, it's the people and how they're behaving inside of them. And I think that brands have to be careful about how they're showing up in different ways. But I think certainly building relationships with youth and then growing that over time and learning from that is probably the smartest thing any brand can do.
If you had to go back and give advice to Andrea, who's in her 20s or 30s, what would you say to her?
Can I go back? Should we go?
Well, yes.
I think that interestingly, I always tried to fit in when I was in my 20s. I was working first in printing and publishing, and I always tried to dress like all the dudes I was around. I tried to behave in the same ways that I saw of everybody around me. And I think that what you realize is life is a lot more fun if you're just yourself and if you really lean into that. But it takes a while to get comfortable and to discover who you are. I mean, I feel like I'm still learning that now. And that's one of the things that I love being a part of vYve by Vayner is we're working with people that really want to lean into that discovery and figure out how can they become their best and happiest self. And none of us are there yet, I don't think, right? There's more to go. But I certainly think I took chances, but I kind of wish I would have taken even more if I could go back. How about you? What would you
Me-
do? What
Oh,
would you
what would I do? Oh, good question. 20s and 30s. Wow. Coming out of college in Minnesota. Oh my. Oh,
I love it.
you know, when
Minnesota. I was right next to you in
Minnesota, I gotta love it. Yes, just across the river from Wisconsin, where you're from. I took a risk when I came out of college, and that was to work at a tobacco company. And I had a couple of other offers, and I thought, worst comes to worst, I can always say I tried something different. And I could go into pharma or whatever else. 3M was in our backyard in Minnesota, so I knew there's a lot of friends over there. If I wanted to work really nice, safe, stable job. But I was like, let me go something that is a little different. somehow. And you know, I got that job by sending in the old school way. I sent a resume. I saw a
Wow.
piece of, it was old school ad in a magazine, a career magazine, and they had this woman and she had her hands up in the air and she's like, "Yeah, we want the best and the brightest, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "All right, just send it over there." I later found out that resume actually got to a real human in Chicago, then read it, forwarded it to the folks in Minneapolis, and they set up the interview.
Oh, that
So
is so beautiful.
yeah, and so if I went back, I would say, I guess, take even more risks. I don't know what would have occurred because we didn't have all the toys and gadgets and technology that we have today, but definitely even listen more. That's what I would say, because and surround yourself with even more wiser people. I had the great fortune there when I started working there. I had a guy who became my mentor, like Mr. Orsini, like James.
Yeah.
And he basically helped me when I got in. And he was like, "Here, do this, do that, don't do that, avoid that, be dressed this way." And that was super helpful for me. I don't know. It's a hard thing to do because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, it's true. And it's funny that you mention, do we go back enough and maybe tell the people that have influenced us and really taken us under their wing? Have we gone back and told them enough about how they change things up? We've been asking our vivers to be thinking about that. And we're thinking about even starting a show around it and acknowledge and maybe bring people to the forefront to tell them like what you're doing now and how this person might have influenced you how many decades ago and that kind of thing. And to,
I like
to
that.
be able to share those stories.
I like that. I would give a shout out to Jonathan Machin, and he still lives in Minnesota. The last time I knew. So Jonathan Machin, if you're John, he goes by John. John, if you're listening to this or somebody knows John Machin, he may be retired by now. Let him know that I'm thinking about him, and he made a huge impact on my world and my life.
That's amazing. And so for me, it would be Susan Spiewak. She was one of the only women in printing and publishing, and she was my first time female boss. And she had the wild, long, crazy hair and wore, instead of the black pinstripe suit, she would wear the red jackets and things like that. And she loved people. She loved people so much, and she knew everything about them, not because she wanted to be a good salesperson, but because she actually loves people. And so I don't know, it unlocked something in me and I need to go back to Susan Spiewak. So same, let's get out there and find those people.
No doubt. How did you make the transition from Madison, Wisconsin to New York? Because I'm
Yeah,
thinking you're saying Madison, but wait, you Interbrand, you're at Vayner. These are not Chicago, Milwaukee, or Madison based companies. This is New York, East Coast.
that's
There's a
right.
huge difference in culture, weather, people, and all of that. How did you go from Madison to New York or the New York area? How did that happen?
Yeah, I'm a Midwestern girl at heart, and my branding work started on the farm. And honestly, a lot
Tell
of
us
the
about
things
it.
we learned about marketing, I learned the fundamentals from selling stuff at the farmer's market every weekend. You learn things about real people that are doing real work. And even at the farmer's market, I worked with this farmer. He used hydroponics to be able to grow his vegetables. And so he would be the first one to have sugar snap peas. So he would get them there 2 weeks ahead of time. And we would throw them out to the crowds and we would take pictures of any of our customers and we would have them grab their own vegetables and weigh it themselves. So that interactivity was really key. And there wasn't social media, but we definitely were still promoting all the photos and the experiences and things like that. And so I don't think I knew it was marketing at the time. It was just
Mm.
selling vegetables, but I oftentimes go back to it and just remind myself some of those principles about how you price things higher if you're the only one selling it. We would leave early because we sold out and everybody else down the way wasn't making things so fun and energetic. So I definitely learned a lot of things in my Wisconsin days, but I was dying to go and live someplace that was bigger. And so New York was a great place for me to cut my teeth. I was working with a printing company in Wisconsin and they needed a presence in New York. And so in my 20s, I moved out there, opened up a sales office. I was the only Midwest woman that was probably in sales and printing in New York City. So anyone would see me because they just thought that my accent I was definitely Andrea at that time.
Not Andrea.
And I would cold call and anyone would see me. So, yeah, so I brought my Midwestern, but I started trying to call myself Andrea because I was a little embarrassed about the fact that I was from Wisconsin at that time. Now I'm down for it again. But yeah, it was a big, big shift, but a really important one. And I think I liked the whole idea that you could find people that were even crazier about any passion that you might have in New York City.
Yeah.
And yeah, just lots of life in New York.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I lived a few years in Brooklyn during the 80s, which is totally not the Brooklyn people know today. It was the down and out, slummy Brooklyn of the 80s that people see in movies.
Yeah, and for me, it was the East Village, and I was in a 6-story walk up, and I had to step over bodies. There's a tattoo artist on the second floor, so I'd have to step over bodies and drugs coming down the stairs. Oh, it's yeah, that's what makes
Yeah.
sense, no, right?
Yeah,
I was
no,
here
it's
for something different, so I got it.
There you go. What were the postcards like that you sent back to your family and friends?
I know, yeah, you gotta imagine that I was hiding all that stuff, right? There's nothing that would any of those stories were left untold to my Midwestern mother, so yeah, please
oh my
bring and
God.
share 'em
She would
now.
have sent you back home.
That's right, you know it.
As folks are trying to use the most out of the resources they have, you work for a guy who's probably super resourceful as well, James, as well as Gary. And what do you see that is an underutilized resource that businesses, entrepreneurs could use that's readily available, but being underutilized?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the work that we're doing now through vYve by Vayner is trying to really help people to better understand themselves and where are they maybe living in their shadows versus living in best self, if you will. And so I think a lot of what I've learned from Gary is that the more that we can be self-aware and that we can work our asses off to try to elevate what we're doing, but to also understand where our limitations are. And sometimes there's certain things that we're just not going to do well. I think a lot of people that feel the need to pretend and to pretend for themselves in as much as their organizations. And I think the more we can take those walls down, it gets back to the vulnerability that we were talking about before, that we can build stronger organizations. And certainly for Vayner, we're a couple thousand people strong now. We're a global company. We've been around, we're celebrating our 15th year anniversary. And we do a lot of work. We have leadership assessments. We use a leadership assessment called Print that's powered by vYve by Vayner, where we help people to really understand what are their triggers and then what are the styles of communication and behavior and things like that that can be conducive to working better in a more collaborative way with your team, to be a clearer leader, all of those kind of things. And figuring out where are you stuck and maybe where can we have these breakthroughs where we learn how to get ourselves unstuck. So I think there's a lot of work that's required there, deep work. And I think now corporations are open to doing anything that's going to increase productivity, increase impact, and that kind of thing. They're a little bit more open to it. And so we're seeing a tremendous amount of growth in the people that we're working with as a result.
This podcast is brought to you by Global Tech Worldwide, your technology office experts that's been around for 20 years, providing trusted, personalized office IT solutions. Check them out at amazon.com/TECK. That's amazon.com/TECK. You know, working with such a dynamic place, obviously you all have a ton of young people. From the videos I've seen of Vayner, as well as Gary when he's walking around. We actually had JMO on as well. If we harken back about a year ago, he came on. What perceptions would you say have been dispelled since you worked there? I'm sure, like you said, I don't know if I want to work with Gary. No way. I don't know if I want to work there. But once you started working there and working for Gary and James, what would you say? Like, wow, that's not what I thought it was like.
Yeah, that's such a great question because I've operated in this world of mostly the Fortune 500 and working a lot with CMOs, and almost all of them come to me and say, really like to work for Gary. They want to hear kind of the backstory, thinking that there's going to be, these dark secrets that I'm going to share, right? And the truth is that it is one of the most incredible places. If you would have told me that there was a culture and a vibe that's like this in a company, especially of this size. It's one thing if you create something and there are 10 people in it, right? It's another thing if it's 2,000 people strong, many businesses, many geographies. To scale something like this is pretty astounding. So I would say the hardest thing for me, having left Omnicom and Interbrand, is I almost had to let go of a lot of things that I thought were in my toolkit and that I might want to bring out as recommendations to Vayner, only to learn that, every culture is incredibly different. And this one is one that is constantly changing. It doesn't have the same levels of kind of bureaucracy and hierarchy. So there could be someone that just joined the organization yesterday and graduated from college that does come up with the biggest idea for Pepsi tomorrow. And that's great. And we need to celebrate that.
Yeah.
It could be somebody that has a million years of experience and maybe isn't as connected to social media, but they might have an idea that's also breakthrough. Just having a culture that celebrates that is so important. And I think most companies try to create different situations and ways to enhance creativity, but it doesn't really come from the heart like it does at Vayner. And so I don't know. It's just, you can't explain it. It does come from the top. The way that Gary lives, works, behaves, celebrates life, it's very consistent. He has a tremendous amount of drive. He sees people, he sees me in some ways that I don't even see myself. He's got an old soul, and then he's got, youth to him that is just unimaginable. And so it's great to have somebody like that at the helm.
If you were offering advice to leaders that are listening to this, obviously you work in a dynamic environment. How does somebody take that into their own organization? Probably doesn't have 2,000 people in it. They may have 50 people, maybe 100 people. How do you infuse that as a leader? What is it that you need to do? What's the first step that you should be thinking about if you want to take some of that dynamic culture and be able to evolve your company to scale it up and to have the culture that you're looking for?
I think the most important thing is to make your employees feel seen and to feel safe. And if you do that and you create a playground that has those parameters, people can go wild in that playground and they can do unmanageable things together so that you get the multiplier effect. I think we're all better together. It's funny, we at vYve, we always are striking this pose of the V formation. I don't know if you're familiar with how geese migrate from the north to the south, but they do it in that V formation for a reason. And there's research to show that if they fly together in that formation, that they'll fly 70% further, that they'll conserve energy quite a bit, that it's only the first goose that is flying that's taking on the majority of the headwinds, right? And so that leader has to be out there for a while, but then goes back and allows somebody else to lead. So I think some of it is, what can you learn from that? That you want to grow other leaders. If you're the leader, you don't want to be the only leader. You want to have lots of leaders that are authorities on all kinds of things. So that means sharing that front role some, right? Handing the mic over. Also, you're able to see things. If you're in a V, you're able to spot different things, and it's a safer way to fly. Communication is better, all kinds of things. And so we love our V's at Vayner, if you can't tell with very V. But the whole idea that we're flying in this formation that kind of celebrates the individual, but that collectively we could go further together.
Well, that's awesome. That is just, that's awesome. I love that we have geese that fly by around here in the DC area. I'm surprised they're allowed to fly. There's so many restricted airspaces
No
around
fly
here.
zone? Do they know
Yeah,
there's
there's no fly zones all over the place, and I'm surprised they're allowed to even fly by. It's a very interesting take, because you talk to people and you're always trying to find, how do you get an edge and how do you infuse some of those principles in there? And the social media space is so different from other spaces. And so you're going to have some of that dynamic, but it sounds like you could take this and bring it into an organization and infuse that type of leadership style.
Yeah, you got to do the work at the end of the day. I think that's the biggest thing, is it doesn't matter who you are. You got to get in there and you got to do the work and you got to keep doing it. You have to keep trying things out and learn what's working and what's not. And Gary's on the front lines doing that work, right? And he can run circles around any one of us. And that's a real motivator.
Yeah,
And you learn from it, right? You have to stay humble. And I think that's probably one of the most difficult things for many leaders, and to also continue to want to explore new things, right? I think as you kind of rise up and you do have more years of experience, you might become a little bit more risk averse because you're trying to protect what you have. Whereas you really need to just continue to lean in and change. And so how do we create environments that foster that?
exactly. Creating that safe space. And speaking of spaces, I know you're in South Florida right now, talk to us in Miami. People get excited about going to South Beach and all of this stuff. What's happening out
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. So Art Basel is happening. And yeah, so I'm over in Wynwood, very close to South Beach. Last year, we were over in South Beach, and we've got a beautiful activation, the Art House, under our Gallery Media group. So we're going to be gathering up a bunch of clients and talking about all kinds of interesting things that are happening in the world. But there's so much happening here, and we like to really be where real people are, if you will. So there's a lot going on culturally in Miami any day of the week. But certainly, Art Basel is a special time that attracts people from all over the world. Lots of creativity here. And we're going to be spending the week. I've got a bunch of vivers, as we call them, that are coming down for a birthday celebration of one of our vivers. But we've got a few folks that do some interesting work in the art world that are down here as well. We also are going to be participating in a Wellness Oasis Summit that has some of our friends and speakers from vYve. So we've got Deepak Chopra is going to be speaking, Dan
Ooh.
Buettner, Mark Hyman. Gary himself is going to be with Big Sean and talking a little bit more about mental health. Gary will share a little bit more about his book that he just dropped that's for kids, and talking about some of his ambitions around VFriends and storytelling and how to help youth there, back to our earlier conversation. So lots going on.
It sounds exciting. Sounds like the place to be for all of that jazz.
Come
I don't
on
know.
down.
I, I don't know if anybody that's gone down to Miami and said, I was bored out of my mind. Very few.
Probably not.
Isn't it true? They won't tell you all the stories though, will you?
Oh, no, it's like what stays in Vegas. One of those
Yeah,
things.
that's right. That's right. Yeah. Whereas, yeah, from Minnesota and Wisconsin, we share all the stories, don't we?
Or let me tell you,
Let me tell you.
it's funny because you say that my brother was telling me about ice fishing season that's coming up, and he's going to get an augie. He's still there. He's in Duluth, of all places, right? Talk about frigid. And I was like, no, I don't know about standing or sitting on top of a huge ice block for hours at a time
Isn't it
waiting for fish.
amazing? I have to say, I remember walking around on the lakes in Madison, and yeah, people would like literally dudes would go and disappear for like a month. And I remember seeing one of these ice huts with a television that was plugged in.
Yes. Yes.
It's insane.
People are still doing. I remember my first time I was driving to a client and driving just north, and you see a lot more lakes once you leave the Twin Cities, once you leave Minneapolis. And the first time you see a car on a lake in the winter, you're like, that's going through the water. There's
That's
no way that car is going to stay there. There's no way that hut is going to stay there. It's just going to go. But every season so far, who knows? Maybe it'll become Miami in a few years, but every winter, people head out to the lakes, put the hut, do the ice fishing. You even see cars and trucks on the lake, which to me, I'm sorry, but I'm not doing that.
You're not doing it. You got to
No,
draw.
no, 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 no.
I'm not doing it either. If you're not
I'd
doing it,
rather take a trip to where you are.
That's right. Yeah. No, I don't want to tell you how nice the weather is down here because I just left. It finally got cold in the Northeast. Don't you think, Dave?
Yeah, it finally got cold. I think it hit 20 degrees this week.
Yeah. And
That's
everyone's complaining like this is a whole new thing. That's because I think it was 80 a couple weeks ago.
It was.
So anyway, but yeah, I'm not gonna rub anything in around the weather in Miami. Let me just put it that way.
Ugh, ugh. So Andrea,
See,
Andrea, what do you want to leave us with in terms of this is what's been burning inside of me? This is a passion I want to share with the world. Words of wisdom. What do you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I just really want people to lean into 2025 in a big way. And I think that there's been so much angst floating around in the world in the past couple years that I would love for people to really think about what is it that they can do themselves to become happier, and to maybe think of 2025 as like, what would it take to have that breakthrough year, that best year of your life? And really go and, like we were talking about, go and do the work on that. Go to do the work on that.
Mm, mm. You're not asking for anything easy. Certainly not. Self-reflection can be very difficult because sometimes, like you're talking about, in the mirror, you may see some things you don't like.
It's
And that's the part of what's the hard part. You're going to see some stuff you like, stuff you don't like. If you want to change it, take some work.
I think so. And I think sometimes it's helpful to have others around you that can help in creating a space where you can share some of it and get some perspective. And, not everybody has that tribe, right? So
Mm.
if we can maybe find that tribe that allows you to really be able to be honest with other people and then hopefully with yourself at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly with that. So, Andrea, muchas gracias. Appreciated. We have to do part 2 here because there's so much more. You have a bunch of questions. I know you got to get to the art thing and everything. Maybe Gary on the other line calling you, say
That's
he
right.
needs you to do some things before you get cooking here. But so I just want to thank you for coming in today, sharing your time with us. Much appreciated.
Well, Rolando and Dave, it's been so fun. And if we can come back and maybe we can share all of the Jamesisms. Mr. James Orsini, I've been
How about we
starting
do a
to write
TikTok
down.
live on that?
I
I
think
like that idea.
we should create something
And with
really
James
magical.
on it too.
Yeah, there we go. He was always got some new ones. So let's bring him. Yeah, maybe we bring the both of us together.
Oh,
We'd
I
love to do
like
that.
it. I like it. A little round table of Jamesisms.
We want to make him turn bright red. That's the goal.
Yeah, love it. Big
Big
prop,
prop.
Jimmy the Pencil.
Good.
Andrea Sullivan today on the podcast. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. And if this podcast with Andrea Sullivan has provided you with value, I want to invite you to hit that subscribe and like button because it means the world to us. It lets us know we're on the right track. The algorithms push it out to more people, and we could bring you more valuable folks like Andrea, maybe Gary V one day. Maybe she may
Let's
Andrea can
do
make
it.
that happen
Let's
for
make
us.
Gary V. Okay. I got it
We've
on
had so
on
many.
the
We've
list.
had so many Vayner folks. You're the third one that we've had, so we love having folks from Vayner. And if you want to help support us even further, and you love what we're doing, go ahead and check out in the description. We have links to the business services that we offer. So if you're looking for a technology partner that can tackle complex technology issues, I invite you to check those out. Somebody on my team will get in touch with you and see what we can help you with. Now, we've been talking about complex technology issues. We've talked about cultural issues in the context of work. And everybody right now is talking about Amazon. So I talked to James Thompson a little while ago, and he had some really interesting things to say if he could meet Andy Jassy right now, what we would ask him and say to him. I was actually surprised what he had to say. So go ahead and check that conversation out. I'll join you there with James, formerly of Amazon, and I will see you next time.